How's it going there, Frank?
Adjusting my green screen. I forgot about that. I'll turn on some lights.
Slightly askew.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Wait a second, more light. Technology, don't you just love it? Yeah.
Yay!
All right, I was ready to go 2 minutes early. I forgot to do that part. All right. Well, okay, so it's 40 degrees in your car. It says in your car it's 40 degrees.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
My car I wasn't in. It's a convertible. So whatever the temperature is outside is the temperature in the car. No AC. It's like the house. The only two letters I don't have in the alphabet are A and C.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fans then.
So I've got a towel here, folks. I'm losing a couple of ounces per show, but I'll make up for it when I stop doing the show. I'll have myself a half dozen beers to basically rehydrate, which is not true because drinking beer does not hydrate you. It dehydrates you. Well, okay, let's look at what Aaron wants to talk about.
Sure.
WTF. WTF. The first one, WTF. I mean, come on. You want to be a Leaf, you don't go talk to the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, he hasn't technically started talking to the Canadiens.
Is he open to going there? Is he open to going there?
I'm thinking it's more just rumors more than anything else.
It better be.
Because
I respect that man. Aaron, I respect that man.
He's going to be 35 soon. He's just played the last year of a 7-year, $11 million contract that he signed back in 2018. But the Leafs have only offered him $4 million so far. So that seems to me to be, I don't know, a little low maybe.
For 1 year?
Well, that's AAV.
But for 1 year?
No, it's a 3-year contract, $4 million a year.
A 3-year contract. They're offering him $12 million to play hockey at the age of, what did you say?
He's currently, he's soon to be 35.
36 and 37.
Yep.
Would it be fair to say, and this is where guys like Tavares, I admire his moxie, I admire his reputation, but here's the thing. Can the Leafs afford to pay somebody that kind of money who doesn't help them in the playoffs?
Well, I mean, he just came off a 74-point season. I can't help but think that there's other players out there that they might be able to get that could possibly get them to that 74-point total who might potentially be better in the playoffs. Some of them guys have played themselves out of playing for the Leafs, let's be honest here, because they performed so well.
Right.
But, we'll see what happens.
The thing of it is, for a guy like Tavares, great character guy, but can't skate, can't keep up when things start really. They lost against Florida because they couldn't keep up with Florida. They couldn't match the pace. And one of the reasons they can't match the pace is Tavares. And that's a reality. So if Buddy wants to be a Maple Leaf, then he has to realize that he can go out and get 5 or 6 million somewhere else. If he can, God bless him. God bless him. But in Toronto, the Leafs need, it's been talked about, it's understood, and there has to be a change, a big change. I could use the phrase, but
not bringing Tavares back and not bringing Marner back would definitely be a big change. But if you also want to make massive change for the Maple Leafs, you might want to consider getting Morgan Rielly to waive his no trade.
He's another guy that when things got tough, he was unable to do it. And part of the reason he was unable to do it is, again, foot speed. He's not very fast. We learned from the Edmonton Oilers, the final moves that they made. They went against what the Leafs were doing. No offense to Treliving. He went with stay-at-home defensemen, baggage smashers, guys that were able to dig the puck out of the corner. Problem is, they were unable to move the puck. They weren't fast enough to get at the puck and to move the puck. Edmonton decided to bring in a couple of defensemen that were mobile, pass-first defensemen. And I think it really worked really well. I believe that Edmonton would have put up a better fight if they didn't have the key injury that they had. Their best winger was on the shelf, and without him, he was a couple of goals extra. And the Leafs, for that matter, their defense has to be quick. We're back. We're into those days now. They've got enough guys that are stay at home, work hard type thing. They have to consider the same issue they have up front. They can't have a core four that do the exact same thing. They can't have a core four defenseman that do the exact same thing. They have to be able to do something else. And the something else the Leafs lack is a puck-carrying defenseman.
So then the question then becomes, who are the comparables for Morgan Rielly, and who would be a big puck-moving defenseman that's a UFA, a pending UFA that they might be able to get their hands on?
The good news, Aaron, is I won't criticize Treliving for trading for somebody because, in my opinion, they're talking about guys like there's a kid in Buffalo that they really think will work really well for them, has a future, a young player, but still, a restricted free agent, right? He's an RFA. So I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you who I think they should get because that's BS. What's really important is we understand the kind of player they need. And the kind of player they need is a puck-moving defenseman. I don't think there's an older guy that's big cap, Carlson, that's available. But does he move the puck as fast and as well as he did in the past?
The other thing that comes up for Carlson as well is questions about his mobility, because that was a big concern with his ankle injury and surgery and whatnot. One of the reasons I think that they tried to get rid of him in San Jose is because he was getting barn doored all the time. There's only one way he could turn, So that's the other thing that you need to look at here.
And when you talk about a puck moving defenseman, right? You're talking actually a younger guy, Aaron. And the Leafs don't have the ability to pick a young defenseman that they could groom in a couple of years. It ain't happening.
Yeah, that is definitely an issue. It's a need that they have now, and when you look at his current cap hit of $11.5 million, payable all the way through until 2026, 2027, that is going to be an issue. I mean,
he's the kind of guy that if they took him, they should take a draft pick with him.
Yeah, and somebody should be retaining on him. That's the real issue here as well, is he's just too much dollar value. But his no movement clause is also going to be an issue.
Where he is, he's not doing any good.
No, but the question then becomes, would he do any good if he came to Toronto? And the answer to that is probably not.
No.
It's nice to have that in your back pocket, maybe, but there's no real way. And even if they were to ship him off to the minors, they'd still be paying him $7.5 million to be there.
I'm okay with McCabe and his ability to pass and move the puck forward. And I'm okay with Rielly most times. It's the most times that I can't. The Leafs right now, they need more mobility in the back end. True as can be, right?
Long and the short of it.
They need forwards that are truculent, tough, but have speed and are able to score. But those are unicorns. Who am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about two guys on Florida that are exactly what the Leafs lack, right? A guy we all hate. If you're a Leaf fan, you hate him, but you'd love to have him. You have one of the brothers, Kachuk, that guy, and he played injured. He's only going to be better next playoffs. These are the guys the Leafs need. Who do the Leafs have that emulate that in some capacity?
Yeah, and that's the major consideration here. I mean, Aaron Ekblad is currently up for a new deal.
He wants to stay in Florida.
Understandable, and
but
at his
not necessarily only his choice.
Well, at his cap hit of $7.5 million, you'd be trading like for like. You're still the same amount of money out the door. I mean, the one advantage that you've got there is that he's a right shot defenseman for the same price. but you're not going to be able to re-sign him, obviously, for the same price because, despite his suspension for PEDs, he's coming off another Stanley Cup win. So
and they have like a guy like Marner. Let me ask you a question. Here's the thing that irritates me and bothers me and has since the Leafs have had him. I found deficiency in him early because he couldn't play well in the playoffs. Imagine putting Sam Reinhart and Mitch Marner on scales. I got to tell you, the money that each of them wants or will get is the reverse of what their value is in my mind. In my mind. Sam Reinhart is a guy that in the playoffs, he's just the kind of player that knows how to win, and he sneaks up on you. Marner isn't a sneak up on you guy. He's a guy that he dipsy doodles and eventually you follow where he's going. You figure out where he's going. Reinhardt's the kind of guy that works well in the playoffs because he does his best work is in a matter of a split second. He goes from being inconsequential to killing you.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've got here is there is actually a certain amount of cost certainty that comes with Sam Reinhart right now because he's signed to an 8-year extension with $8.625 million in average annual value.
8.6, Aaron.
Yeah, 8.6.
Marner wants 14.
Yeah,
forget
there's
the
a
state
significant
tax
cost
stuff.
savings.
Forget the state tax thing because that for this conversation, just because cap is cap, right? Cap is cap. So for Marner goes to Florida. On what planet do you think Florida is going to give him $14 million?
Yeah.
On what planet? Please, if you're giving a guy like Sam Reinhart 8.6, it ain't going to get any higher than 9 for anybody on that team. Barkov, I think, makes 10. I think he makes about 10. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he makes 10.5.
10.5? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's taking under him. I always said, and I will always say, the best organizations are the ones that set up a pecking order and have their top guy be somebody that they, not just their captain because he's their best player in their mind, but because he's a leader. He's a guy that takes the team forward. Barkov is one of those guys, even though he didn't really have that great a playoff, I don't hear anybody complaining about how he played and the fact that he zeroed out line number 1 in every series.
Yeah, he managed to be the shutdown that they were looking for. He was basically the off switch for a lot of teams, and that's something that you have to consider going forward. I mean, Lundell is signed all the way out until 2030 at $5 million per. Carter Verhaeghe is signed at $7 million per all the way out until 2033.
And Verhaeghe is a Nylander comparative. In my mind, I would put Nylander and Verhaeghe in the same place.
Yep. It's hard to believe, but Marner's been around for like 10 years.
Yeah.
It's been almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So I guess
it's not like we don't know what he brings to the table.
No, and it's not like we haven't been punching ourselves in the nose every single playoffs or going into knowing what he brings to the table and what happens in the playoffs.
And Aaron, the latest rumor says he's only looking for a 2-year deal.
Well, I mean, a 2-year deal is a 2-year deal. If we can fit him in under the cap, I don't have anything personally, nothing against the guy. I'd be willing to see because those are technically his show me years.
Well, if he wants a 2-year contract for $14 million, that he's not worth $14 million. He's just not worth it. I'm sorry. He's not. I wouldn't pay him more than 10 if it were up to me. And by my budget, in my mind, the way it works in my mind, I can't tell you what defenseman they should trade for, but in my mind, I can tell you the budgetary side. The budgetary side is simple. A guy like Marner that needs somebody to help him in the playoffs because he can't do the playoffs very well at key moments. I can't give him more than 10 million. I can't. You see, I can't give him more than Sam Reinhart makes. I can't give him more. I can't. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, I'm with you on that. Like, honestly, looking at his former contract, you got to say, uh, the up that he's looking for, the raise that he's looking for based on expected future performance does not align with his previous performance, which is usually how you're graded when it comes to these sorts of things. Any other person in the world, they look at your past performance saying, well, how did you do in the years leading up to your contract renewal? Well, that's what we'll give you. We're not going to give you $14 million for essentially magic beans that you haven't been able to grow. And we were sold on that promise when we gave him a contract of $10.9 million a year, was the, I'm going to be there in the playoffs, I'm going to be magic. And it's been anything but.
Well, the magic is that he disappears when the game really gets tough. Yeah, no, he's a great player. He's a great player outside of the playoffs. He is one of the best players, and he proved it. He's proving it every year. He is one of the best players in the regular season. Well, the regular season, it's gotten tiresome. It doesn't get Leaf fans the playoffs. And let me ask you this question. Here's the question: that would you have traded, let's say, just for the sake of argument, because I want you to know where my head's at. In the 10 years that Marner's been with the Maple Leafs, would have you traded a Stanley Cup for 3 years they don't make the playoffs in those 10 years?
If we won the Cup, would I have traded Marner?
Would you trade 3 of the playoff years for 1 Cup win?
In a heartbeat.
Right? So mathematically, you've just agreed to something I'm saying, which is in 10 years, they could have won 3 cups. Instead of giving away draft picks and doing that kind of thing, or having the right guys, having the right kind of team, that's in your mind, you're saying in the 10 years that Marner was here, I would have traded 9 years not making the Cup, not making playoffs, and a year or 2 of winning the Cup. Because essentially, not making the playoffs and not winning is not much different. There's not much difference in not making the playoffs and getting eliminated in the first round. What is the difference?
Yeah, I mean, the only real difference is gate receipts for MLSE at the end of the day.
But even for MLSE, what are the gate receipts and the price of the tickets in the first round, second round, third round, and the Stanley Cup final? You don't think the tickets get more expensive with each series?
They're almost tripled by the time you get to the Stanley Cup finals. You're basically playing for an entire season for 7 games. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
So if they have a couple of years of going to the Cup rather than going just to the first round, even the team makes a lot more money. So it's in their best interest to field the best team to win them a Cup. And they've blown it for 10 years. The whole time Marner's been here, they have blown it. They have been unable to capitalize on those young players. The other thing in the playoffs, just to keep with the theme, Tavares, Marner, and such, and changing the way the Leafs look. Another thing that has to happen is you have to have a team with guys that in the playoffs that play above the level that they play in the regular season. We've learned that each playoffs. We've learned it with Tampa. We've learned it with Washington. We've learned it with Florida both years. They struggle. They struggle in the regular season, but they got the guys that when you turn up the heat, they're more than happy to stay in the kitchen.
Yeah, and the way that the way that Florida has built their team, they're looking to make deep runs for the next couple of years at least.
Oh, absolutely. And
that's proper roster construction right there.
And that's where the state tax comes in handy, because they have the extra little coin to throw into the kitty. So Marner, break up with the Leafs. You want to summarize it for me? What put them in this position? Why? Why are we here in this position? I already explained my reasoning. Share yours with the media and yourself. Tell me, please. I'm dying to hear it.
Well, I mean, his NHL debut went all right. His preseason games were decent. The problem that we have here is he was a great performer during the regular season. We've mentioned this over and over and over again on this show. He's been a great performer during the regular season who pulls a Houdini for the playoffs. In other words, he's not there. And eventually you get to that point where fan patience grows thin, and then you have his agent, Darren Ferris, who is threatening to have him play overseas, and potentially having him sit out like William Nylander did. And it's just like that. Those sort of bullying tactics and negotiating through the media don't help the player. What's going to be remembered here is not that Marner's team is the one that screwed him. Marner's management team, like his agent and whatnot, aren't the ones that screwed him over. We're only going to think of it in terms of Mitch Marner tried to screw the Leafs over. And
I just think it's an ego problem. It's just simply an ego problem. This talk about his dad complaining about, if you remember when the C was up for grabs, why and we're talking before Tavares got the C, right? Back then.
Yep.
Oh, wow. My son's as good as any player as a captain. I beg to differ. Tavares was on that team. He earned it with what he's done over the years, was my feeling back then. And then when it moved to Austin Matthews, there are some rumblings from his camp that they were a little offended that Marner didn't get serious consideration instead of Austin Matthews. I am curious. I don't know about you, but how curious are you? How would the C have been carried by Marner, assuming that maybe the responsibilities of being captain caused Austin Matthews to underperform for his ability? I'm talking for him. A lot of players would love to do what he did this year, right? But for him, he underperformed. Would Marner have handled the C better than Austin Matthews?
I honestly don't think so. And based on his press availabilities after games, based on some of the stuff that he said at different locker clearouts, his comments, especially after this year, it was just one of those. It's almost like he's trying to shuffle off any sense of responsibility or accountability for what happens in the playoffs, and that is not necessarily something I think that would float if you were to be the team captain. There has to be a sense of responsibility there. There has to be a sense of duty there. The fact that he said, well, I've loved my time here, was an indication to me that
he quit.
He checked out 3 months before the end of the season is basically what he was still getting points. He's still performing well during the regular season, but it felt to me that he'd already checked out.
Well, it's all about, for scores, it's about GWGs. GWGs matter. I mean, you can be the fourth and fifth and sixth goal in a 7-1 win. It doesn't carry the same amount of weight, much like when people talk about the primary assist, right, Aaron? Like you get a guy passes the puck to somebody and somebody else makes an incredible pass. They both get a point. Right.
But nobody remembers a secondary assist. They all remember the primary.
And my point is that we do know when it comes to points, they're not all equal. Not all goals are equal. We established that. And I'm establishing here with where you would have an assist. Primary assists are far more relevant. But, he's a great player, a wonderful player. But, $8 million gets you a pretty good hockey player. 12, 13, 14 has to get you an outstanding hockey player at that rate. That rate, the player has to be somebody that plays for you 12 months of the year. And there are a lot of questions now, fair or unfair, that, McDavid, did he play like the best player in the world? Or was he negated by a team that could handle the best player in the world? There's truth in both those circles. People can lean on whichever they want. So, and
that's one of the things you have to remember as well, is in hockey, it's not just one-on-one defense, it's defense by committee. And in that combination of Lundell, Marchand, and Luster-Reinen, Florida seems to have come up with the magic bullet for McDavid,
Absolutely.
and for Marner, and for name your opponent in their third round series, and name your opponent in the first round series. They
And
seem to have found it.
And you got to figure out how to get the officiating they get, because they do get really good officiating. That's all.
I'm constantly amazed by that, to be honest with you.
It happened against Edmonton. They got a lot of penalty breaks, non-calls and calls. But anyway, it is what it is. Let's move over just for a little bit here as we wind down. I wanted to talk about the Thunder and the Pacers, 2 Canadians on each team, and now SGA is now a champion. And you're an MVP, but without a championship attached, that MVP doesn't carry the same kind of oomph. And now he has a championship.
So he led the league in scoring. He was the regular season MVP. He was the conference finals MVP, and he was the finals MVP. And I think he's part of a very select group. Jordan and Shaq are the other people that are in the same group, and I can't remember the fourth guy's name. And for the life of me, it's just not coming. But Michael Jordan did it like 4 times. Shaq did it once, and that last time that he did it was in 2025. So to have SGA come out with that, it's so many things have to go absolutely right.
Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell. I'm trying to think who I'm missing. Oh, Bird.
Right. So there you go. Like, and it was their defense that came up absolutely huge. They absolutely stifled the Pacers in the second half. When I flipped back to the game, saw it was 48-45 just after the start of the third quarter. I was like, well, at least it seems relatively low scoring. And then for the Pacers, after losing Tyrese Halliburton in the first quarter, the wheels just fell off, and it was a gong show.
Have a look at the stats, and what amazed me was the obvious. We're just talking about important statistics. The statistics on scoring, making points type thing. They were outplayed. Their stats in that regard were not so good. The Pacers was much better, but in the ones where it was turnover points, all the mistake or cause problems for the opposition, making them make mistakes or causing problems for them defensively, turning the ball over and scoring every time they try a higher percentage. Those are the things that SGA's team did better. They did the grunt work better. The 3-pointers, they did terrible. They weren't good in the 3-pointers, but it was well made up in steals, blocks, all these other things. It's funny, statistics. People say, well, statistics don't lie. And, we both know that sometimes they do. And sometimes statistics need to be looked at in their completeness, as opposed to just picking out one stat. It's like saying, well, one team scored more points than the other. They deserve to win. It was their win. If you want to go that way, you can make that happen. But there are other things, other statistics that point to a reason why a team plays better, especially in big games like a Game 7 in a championship final.
Yeah, and when you compare points off turnovers for the OKC Thunder versus the Indiana Pacers,
it's wide.
The Thunder had 32 points off turnovers. The Pacers had 10.
There it is.
Points in the paint, 40-26. Free ball, all of this stuff is just their free throw percentage was worse. Their 3-point percentage was worse. Their field goal percentage was worse.
Yep.
But those points in the paint and those points off turnovers and the blocks, they all blocked them 22-5.
There you go.
Is huge numbers, and that's the hockey equivalent of going to the dirty areas.
Right. Exactly.
And
when I looked at those stats, I went, yeah, I could see why they won. And winning is all about, and this takes us full circle, my friend, to why I think we agree, why Marner isn't worth $14 million to the Maple Leafs, who've enjoyed his ability to have a great season, a great regular season, but fall flat a little bit in the playoffs. Not because, and here's the thing that I wish he and his people would understand. by virtue of him saying he's that good and wanting that much money, the Leafs don't have money to spend elsewhere to get the kind of guys that do the playoff grunt work, which I've said to you from the day, for quite a few years now. It's always been my belief that you need guys in the playoffs who, have that magic touch. And the Leafs, Treliving, he said that's what he's looking for. The DNA he's referring to are guys that just know how to win when it matters, which also includes making the playoffs at the end of the season, that kind of stuff. But you don't have to dominate in the regular season. You want to dominate in the playoffs. You can do both. You cannot dominate in the regular season and dominate in the playoffs. We saw it with Florida twice, actually 3 times.
And there's a lot of talk that goes around about setting yourself up for the first round matchup. But if you have the playoff DNA, let me finish here, Frank. If you have the playoff DNA, once you get there, it should not matter who your opponent is. If you have the Stanley Cup winning team, you should be able to walk through your opponent. That's the long and the short of it.
And where your proof stands up very tall and obvious? Look what happened to the Leafs. They had the best fight against Florida of any team that Florida met. They had the best result. So the point is, for what you said, what did you say? You've got to beat the team that you meet in the first round, because you never know. It's what starts you all up. The Leafs didn't win that series. They could have won it. And it might have started them up to end up where Florida did. I'm not saying it would have. I'm just saying that, it's like you said, it's not the matchup that matters. You got to beat every team anyway. You got to beat the best teams to win the cup. This business of jockeying for position, that's fool's gold.
And all this talk about the Maple Leafs being one of the better contenders because they took the Florida Panthers to 7 games is bourgeois. The second best team in the league is the team that loses the Stanley Cup, and that was the Edmonton Oilers this year.
Yeah,
the Leafs don't even enter the picture.
Now let's. I want you to talk about Scherzer with the Blue Jays.
So he's actually set to make his return to the rotation on Wednesday. He's officially listed as the starter in Cleveland. This is what the Jays are hoping will be the end of a long, challenging battle against his own right thumb. He dealt with his issue back in spring training and knows it well from the times he's been dealing with it in the last few years. His main concern is getting up on the mound with his thumb at anything less than 100%. He got up to 75 pitches in his last AAA rehab outing with just expected soreness, and the Jays feel at this point that it's about time. He threw a bullpen session on Sunday, simulating roughly 2 innings. The latter half of that finally act as a between starts session, simulating the hitters he expects to face in Cleveland instead of simply building up his pitch count. With Scherzer back and Eric Lauer taking over for the injured and struggling Bowden Francis, the Blue Jays finally have a regular 5-man rotation, which is something that they've been chasing after Scherzer left in March of this year.
Absolutely.
So, Schneider's convinced that he's ready to go. The proof will be in the pudding.
Well, listen, it'll be an interesting season. Now they have the Jays here in Toronto. Mm-hmm. They've got the Argos. We didn't talk about the Argos. Let's just say the Argos did not play well. 0-3. They haven't been 0-3 off the start of a season in decades, in a couple of decades at least. They could have won that game, Aaron. We sat there and watched a game they just let slip through their fingers in so many ways.
There were a lot of defensive lapses. There were a lot of incomplete series. I think the heartbreaker for the fans was the touchdown that they scored, followed by an immediate 99-yard run back, just to cap everything off. Alford walked it off with a kickoff, with a kick return touchdown. But aside from the Argos opening drive touchdown, Trevor Harris was the one that was in control.
Yeah, good for him. Happy for him. Great guy. He's early in his career. He was labeled, and I asked him at Vanstone. I asked him, so how do you feel about his reputation for not being able to do anything in the red zone? And he stood up for him and he said, "No, that's all wrong. He does a great job." And in that time, and he did it against the Argos. The Argos, the coach, the head coach, is livid and promised people were going to be released. So we'll see what happens. They'll keep bringing guys in, and it's far from over. The Canadian Football League, you can start poorly, not too poorly, and at Labor Day, you really start to set up what you are. And right now, the Argos better not be who they are now on Labor Day. That's the thing that worries Argo fans.
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely a concern. Now, the Argonauts do have a couple guys that have been transferred to the single game injury list. Kenneth George Jr., Brian Haralamana, Wynn McManus is currently on the single game injury list. Stephen Smith has been transferred to the practice roster. Jamin Pelly has been added to the practice roster from the Calgary Colts. And Hampton Ergel has been transferred to the practice roster. We haven't seen anybody outright released yet. We haven't seen any wholesale changes, but I'm pretty sure Dinwiddie is going to make something happen in the week to come.
And George is the one that got hit with that play that really bothered the Argos.
Yeah, and he's on the he's been on the 6-game injury list as of the 21st.
Yeah, too bad for him. Good player, needs to be replaced now. Aaron, thanks for doing this, buddy. You're the best.
Hey, appreciate it, Frank. We'll see you Wednesday.
You definitely will. He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. If you want to follow what we do, Candid Frank Stanishi on YouTube, 10:30. See you soon, everyone. Have a great day. Happy hockey. Oh, wait, it's over. All the fun stuff now. All the jibber jabber.
Silly season.
Yeah, silly season. Enjoy it. Talk soon, everyone. Have a great night.